There comes a moment when you realize something unsettling. Your mind has been running ahead of you for years, dragging you into futures you never lived, threats you never saw, and fears that never belonged to you. And it is in this instant of sharp self-awareness that a painful truth begins to form. The truth that your anxiety has not been coming from the world, but from the way your mind has been trained to move through it. That realization is the turning point. The moment you understand that calm is not a coincidence, but a discipline. That peace is not granted by circumstances, but shaped by the posture you choose to carry within yourself. An anxious mind is not broken. It is overstimulated, overprotective, and overcommit to predicting every outcome before it happens. It wants safety so desperately that it creates tension where there is none, urgency where there is only possibility, and danger where there is simply uncertainty. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. They knew that the mind becomes restless when it tries to live everywhere except in the present. A mind divided between what might happen and what already happened has no space left for clarity. This is why even on calm days, your mind finds a way to stir chaos. It replays conversations, analyzes silence, imagines worst-case scenarios, draws conclusions without evidence, and builds emotional storms out of tiny fragments. Anxiety thrives on this pattern. Not because it is powerful, but because it is familiar. It has been reinforced for years. You were never taught to guide your mind. You were only taught to react to it. But the Stoics proved something radically different. Peace is not passive, it is practiced. Seneca wrote that the mind is tormented not by events, but by the judgments it attaches to them. A crowded thought becomes a crisis. A neutral moment becomes a threat. A possibility becomes a catastrophe. When the mind is untrained, everything feels heavier than it is. But when the mind becomes disciplined, even adversity is met with steadiness. Calm is not the absence of noise, it is the strength to remain unmoved by it. The first step, then, is recognizing that anxiety is not an external enemy hunting you. It is an internal pattern waiting to be retrained. And patterns change through deliberate practice, through awareness, repetition, and honest self-observation. Through the willingness to stop letting your mind run freely into every fear it finds. The Stoics believed that nothing is more important than learning to master the direction of your inner world, because the outer world will always be unpredictable. And in this journey, you will discover something liberating. Anxiety is not a permanent identity. It is a temporary habit. The mind learned to worry, and it can learn something else. It can learn steadiness. It can learn presence. It can learn how to return to what is real instead of wandering through what is imagined. This video will guide you through new Stoic pillars, not the same principles you've heard 1,000 times, but deeper attitudes that rebuild your inner foundation. Attitudes that help you regulate your emotional tempo, sharpen your inner perception, and detach from the mental noise that fuels anxiety. Attitudes that teach your mind to stop sprinting toward the future and finally stand still in the present. But before you begin applying these practices, you must understand one essential truth. Your mind becomes anxious when it loses direction. And the moment you stop letting it drift into endless possibilities, everything changes. In the next part, you will learn the first pillar. A mindset that anchors your attention and prevents your thoughts from scattering into chaos. A mindset that creates calm not by removing uncertainty, but by strengthening your presence in the middle of it. Before we move forward, take a moment to strengthen this message. Like the video and subscribe to the channel so more people can learn how to calm their minds and so you don't miss the practices that can reshape your inner world. Your support helps this philosophy reach those who are drowning in mental noise and searching for clarity. Now, the first Stoic pillar in this journey is something rarely discussed, yet profoundly transformative. The ability to command the tempo of your inner world. Anxiety rises not because life moves too fast, but because your mind tries to move faster than life. It accelerates, guesses, anticipates, and reacts long before reality unfolds. The Stoics understood that the mind has a rhythm, and if you don't set that rhythm yourself, anxiety will set it for you. Your inner tempo is the emotional speed at which your thoughts, reactions, and interpretations unfold. When that speed rises beyond your awareness, you lose yourself in mental momentum. Thoughts chasing thoughts, conclusions jumping ahead of facts, fears expanding before you even understand what you're afraid of. The anxious mind lives in fast forward. The calm mind lives in real time. This pillar is about reclaiming the pace of your inner experience. It is not about slowing everything to a crawl, but about refusing to let your mind sprint ahead of your intention. When the Stoics spoke of self-governance, they meant exactly this. You must become the one who decides how quickly your mind moves. Because speed without control becomes panic, but speed aligned with awareness becomes precision. Think of anxiety as a river that suddenly turns into rapids. The water was always flowing, but the intensity changed because the environment allowed it. When your inner world becomes full of pressure, expectations, unresolved worries, or overstimulation, your mental river begins to rush. The point is not to stop the river, but to guide it, to smooth the current, to prevent small ripples from becoming torrents. This is where the practice of inner pacing begins. The Stoics trained themselves to interrupt the mental acceleration before it became emotional collapse. They did this through deliberate pauses, micro-moments of awareness that slow the mind enough for clarity to enter. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the power of a short retreat within yourself, even in the middle of chaos. Not an escape, a recalibration. Inner pacing is built through 3 practices. 1. The micropause. Whenever your mind begins to rush, you notice tension in your chest, racing thoughts, or the impulse to react immediately, you stop for one breath. Just one. This single pause disrupts the runaway momentum of anxiety. It is your way of saying, I will not be dragged. 2. The deliberate response. The Stoics refused to react at the same speed that thoughts appeared. They created space between stimulus and reaction. This space is not hesitation, it is sovereignty. It allows you to respond from clarity instead of panic. It teaches your mind to move at the pace of intention, not fear. 3. The ritual of slowing down internal language. Anxious thoughts come in rapid-fire sequences. When you intentionally speak to yourself more slowly, even internally, the emotional charge decreases. The brain cannot maintain panic at a slow, steady tempo. By changing the speed of your inner dialogue, you change the intensity of your emotional landscape. Commanding your inner tempo is not about controlling outcomes. It's about controlling the speed at which your mind approaches them. And once you master this, anxiety loses one of its greatest strengths. Its ability to overwhelm you before you even understand what is happening. You begin to notice that your mind does not actually need to move as quickly as it does. You start recognizing early signs of acceleration. You feel the shift from calm to anticipatory tension. And instead of being swallowed by it, you intervene, gently, but decisively. This is the moment when you stop being a passenger inside your own mind and begin to take the role of navigator. When your inner tempo is yours again, everything else becomes easier. You think more clearly. You respond more intelligently. You stop assuming the worst. And most importantly, you stop letting fear outrun truth. But this is only the beginning. Commanding your inner tempo gives you control over the speed of your thoughts, yet there is another pillar that gives you control over their shape. In the next part, you will learn how to dismantle the hidden assumptions that fuel anxiety and rebuild your interpretations from a place of strength rather than fear. One of the most overlooked sources of anxiety is not your past, not your circumstances, not your responsibilities, but the unspoken assumptions your mind makes every day without your permission. These assumptions shape the meaning of everything you experience. They color your interpretations, distort your expectations, and silently dictate how you feel long before you become aware of it. And unless you learn to expose and rewrite them, you will continue to react to life through a lens you did not choose. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that suffering comes not from events themselves, but from the stories we attach to those events. The anxious mind automatically fills empty spaces with fear. If someone is silent, it assumes rejection. If something takes too long, it assumes disaster. If a plan shifts, it assumes failure. If uncertainty appears, it assumes the worst. These assumptions operate beneath conscious awareness, creating emotional reactions that feel instantaneous and uncontrollable. You feel anxious not because something terrible happened, but because your mind quietly decided that something terrible will happen. Anxiety is the emotional shadow of these hidden conclusions. This pillar trains you to recognize and rewrite these invisible beliefs before they define your reality. The first step is awareness. When a rush of anxiety hits, you must learn to ask, what did my mind just assume? Not, what's happening? But, what meaning did I assign to what's happening? That question alone reveals how much of your distress is self-created. You begin to see that the mind often crafts narratives based on fear, not evidence. It reaches for the most dramatic interpretation because anxiety prefers extremes. They are easier to cling to, easier to react to, easier to fear. The Stoics practiced something called prosoche, the discipline of constant attention to the workings of the mind. They trained themselves to observe the moment a judgment formed, the moment a fear attached itself to an event, the moment neutrality became threat. They stood between reality and interpretation, refusing to let the mind distort the truth without being challenged. Once you spot the assumption, the second step is neutralization. This is not blind optimism. You are not replacing the worst-case scenario with the best-case scenario. You are simply returning your mind to the ground of reality, where things are uncertain, not doomed, unknown, not catastrophic, inconvenient, not fatal. A neutral replacement sounds like this. I don't know what this silence means. A delay is just a delay. Uncertainty isn't danger. I can handle the outcome, whatever it is. Neutrality is powerful because anxiety cannot grow in neutral territory. It needs exaggeration. It needs finality. It needs the illusion of danger. When you refuse to provide that fuel, fear fades. The third step is reconstruction, building a healthier assumption to replace the old one. The Stoics never stopped at neutralizing. They intentionally replaced harmful interpretations with empowering ones. Seneca often reframed challenges as opportunities to demonstrate character. Epictetus reframed discomfort as training for the mind. Challenges didn't shrink. You grew. A reconstructed assumption might sound like, if this situation matters, I will face it with clarity. My ability to respond is stronger than the problem. Every uncertainty is a chance to practice steadiness. These are not affirmations meant to comfort you. They are frameworks that strengthen you. They change how you enter situations. They reduce anticipatory fear. They remind you of your role as the architect of meaning. And the more consistently you do this, the more your mind begins to change. Anxiety becomes less frequent because the lens through which you view life becomes more accurate. Fear no longer gets the first word. Interpretation becomes intentional, not automatic. Assumptions become tools, not traps. With time, something remarkable happens. You stop believing every thought that appears. You stop treating your mind as an authority and start treating it as a collaborator. You stop letting fear interpret reality on your behalf. This pillar makes you mentally sovereign. When an anxious thought appears, it no longer drags you into darkness. It becomes an invitation to clarity. You observe it, dissect it, reframe it, and walk forward with intention. But there is still another layer to this transformation. You can rewrite assumptions, but they won't hold unless the emotional foundation beneath them becomes stable. In the next part, you will learn how to build the emotional architecture that supports calm, an internal structure that holds steady even when your thoughts try to wander. Even when you slow your mental tempo and rewrite harmful assumptions, anxiety can still find room to grow if your emotional foundation is unstable. Thoughts may create the spark, but emotions are what turn that spark into a fire. The Stoics understood that without inner grounding, a deep, embodied steadiness, the mind becomes vulnerable to turbulence. It reacts to every shift, every tone, every delay, every uncertainty. To eliminate anxiety at its roots, you must learn to anchor your emotional system, not just your thoughts. This pillar is about strengthening the ground you stand on internally. Because regardless of how chaotic the world becomes, a grounded person remains centered. Their emotional weight rests inside them, not scattered across situations they cannot control. The anxious person, however, carries their emotional center outside of themselves. In outcomes, in approval, in predictability, in comfort. When those external conditions wobble, so does their sense of stability. The Stoics built emotional grounding through the practice of embodied awareness, the ability to anchor attention in the body rather than in spiraling thoughts. They believed that the body is the gateway to the present moment, and therefore the antidote to the mind's tendency to wander toward imagined fears. When your emotional system destabilizes, the body feels it first: tightness in the chest, shallow breath, tense shoulders, restlessness in the hands. If left unattended, these sensations feed the anxious mind, and the cycle intensifies. Grounding begins with learning to interrupt this cycle through deliberate physical presence. The first technique is breath anchoring, not as a relaxation trick, but as a command mechanism. The Stoics knew that breathing is the only automatic process we can consciously control, making it a bridge between instinct and intention. When your breath becomes slow and steady, your emotional system receives the message that you are safe. Anxiety cannot thrive under a calm breath. It needs rapid breathing to sustain itself. Controlling the breath means controlling the emotional climate. The second technique is sensory orientation, redirecting the mind from abstract worries to tangible sensations. Touching a surface, feeling the weight of your feet on the ground, noticing the temperature of the air, or identifying sounds in your environment forces the mind out of imaginary futures and into the reality of the present. This is not escapism. It is reclaiming emotional control. The present moment is always less frightening than the future your anxiety invents. The third technique is somatic neutrality, observing your physical sensations without interpreting them as threats. An anxious person feels a fast heartbeat and assumes danger. A grounded person feels the same heartbeat and thinks, "This is simply activation, not a prophecy." By detaching meaning from sensation, you prevent emotional escalation. You learn to coexist with discomfort without surrendering to it. Over time, grounding becomes a psychological shield. Stress still appears, uncertainty still exists, challenges still arise, but they no longer topple you. You remain anchored, centered, internally weighted. Emotions become waves instead of floods. They rise and fall without dragging you away. The Stoics believed that the world does not destabilize us, our lack of grounding does. Two people can experience the same storm. One is shaken, the other remains steady. What differs is the foundation beneath their feet. A grounded person trusts their ability to remain intact. They do not fear the sensation of fear. They do not panic at the onset of discomfort. They do not confuse activation with danger. This pillar also dismantles a common myth, that emotional stability means emotional suppression. The Stoics never suggested hiding your feelings. Instead, they taught you to feel without collapsing. Grounding allows emotions to move through you without defining you. You don't deny them. You don't amplify them. You simply allow them to exist without letting them dominate your actions or your identity. When you master emotional grounding, anxiety loses another major source of power: the ability to overwhelm you through physical sensations. Even when thoughts begin to spiral, your body remains a refuge, a stabilizing force that prevents escalation. You become less fragile, less startled, less reactive. Calm becomes your default posture, not something you chase in moments of crisis. And once emotional grounding is established, you are ready for the next Stoic pillar. A pillar that strengthens your resilience and teaches you how to remain steady even when life circumstances shift unexpectedly. In the next part, you will build the internal environment that sustains calm long-term, ensuring that anxiety has no space to take root again. You can slow your inner tempo. You can rewrite harmful assumptions. You can ground your emotions. But anxiety will always find its way back if the environment inside your mind remains hostile to peace. Calm is not sustained by isolated practices. It is sustained by the atmosphere you cultivate within yourself. And this is the fourth Stoic pillar: shaping the inner environment that protects your clarity instead of destroying it. Most people underestimate how much their internal landscape influences their emotional life. They believe anxiety comes from sudden stress, unpredictable events, or external pressure. But the truth is simpler and far more personal. Your mind becomes what it is repeatedly exposed to. If your internal world is crowded with noise, comparison, urgency, overstimulation, and mental clutter, calm has no room to grow. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience confirmed it. They cultivated mental environments built on order, spaciousness, and intentional stillness. Not because life was easier for them, but because they knew that clarity could not flourish in mental chaos. The first aspect of this environment is cognitive minimalism, reducing unnecessary mental inputs. The mind becomes anxious when it holds too many unprocessed fragments, unresolved conversations, endless notifications, unfiltered information, imagined scenarios, and emotional leftovers from previous days. A cluttered mind reacts faster, fears quicker, and spirals more easily. A simplified mind focuses better and steadies itself naturally. Cognitive minimalism is not about avoiding responsibility. It is about reducing the mental noise that does not serve your growth. When you intentionally select what enters your mind, you regain psychological space, and space is the birthplace of calm. The second component of a calm inner environment is rhythmic structure. The Stoics believed that a steady mind grows inside a steady life. They practiced rituals, not out of superstition, but out of wisdom. Morning reflection, evening review, intentional solitude, controlled exposure to stimuli. These rhythms create predictability within you, even when the world around you is unpredictable. Structure is not restriction. It is support. When your days contain small anchors, moments where you reconnect with yourself, anxiety loses the opportunity to dominate. Rituals remind the mind that it is not drifting, it is guided. The third component is something the Stoics valued immensely: constructive solitude. They believed that spending time alone with your own thoughts is essential for mental strength. Not isolation, solitude. Isolation empties you. Solitude enriches you. In solitude, you learn what your mind truly needs, what patterns you keep repeating, what emotions you've been ignoring, and what beliefs you've outgrown. You hear yourself without the interference of the world. Calm requires silence, not as an escape, but as nourishment. Silence gives your mind space to breathe, to settle, to process. A person who fears being alone with their thoughts is a person who has never learned to lead them. The fourth and final component of this environment is emotional boundaries. Protecting your mental space from unnecessary disturbance. Anxiety often grows when you absorb the fears, tensions, and expectations of others. You begin carrying emotional weight that was never yours. The Stoics were exceptionally skilled at offering compassion without losing themselves. They knew how to care without collapsing, how to listen without absorbing, how to help without inheriting another person's emotional storm. Setting internal boundaries is not coldness, it is responsibility. It prevents your mind from being shaped by forces that have nothing to do with your path. It protects the inner climate you are building. When these four elements, minimalism, structure, solitude, and boundaries, begin to take shape, something extraordinary happens. Calm no longer depends on external peace. It comes from the inside. It flows from the stability you've created. Anxiety may still knock, but it no longer enters freely. Your mind has become a place where clarity is the default and panic is the intruder. And now, with this environment in place, you are ready for the final Stoic pillar: the integration of everything you've learned into a new identity. Part 6 will take you through that transformation and close with the emotional CTA you requested. By the time you arrive here, something within you has already begun to shift. You've slowed your inner tempo, uncovered hidden assumptions, grounded your emotional system, and built an environment where calm can breathe. But there is still one final step, a step that transforms these practices from techniques into identity. Because eliminating anxiety is not about learning tricks to get through bad days. It's about becoming the kind of person who moves through the world with steadiness, clarity, and inner authority. This final pillar is the integration of everything you've practiced. The moment where calm stops being something you chase and becomes the way you exist. The Stoics never intended for their teachings to be temporary relief. They intended them to reshape character, to build individuals who were unshakable not because life was gentle, but because their inner world no longer broke under pressure. Integration begins when you realize that calm is not a momentary achievement. It is a posture, a way of relating to yourself and everything around you. It is the ability to stay rooted even when your thoughts try to pull you away, to remain centered even when emotions begin to rise, to respond with clarity even when uncertainty is present. Calm is not passive. Calm is disciplined strength. And the truth is this: anxiety doesn't disappear because life becomes easier. It fades because you become stronger. It fades because you no longer believe every thought that appears. It fades because you no longer let your emotions escalate without permission. It fades because your mind now moves at the pace of intention, not fear. It fades because you have created internal conditions where panic cannot survive. This is the quiet transformation the Stoics pointed to, not a life without storms, but a self that no longer collapses under them. You become someone who moves through chaos with presence instead of panic. Someone who meets uncertainty with curiosity instead of dread. Someone who feels discomfort without turning it into catastrophe. Someone who trusts their ability to remain whole, no matter what the external moment demands. When integration takes hold, calm becomes natural. It becomes your default state, not because it eliminates emotion but because it organizes it. You begin to notice the subtle gap between stimulus and response, the space where choice lives. You begin to sense the moment your mind tries to accelerate and the moment you guide it back. You begin to hear the quiet shift between assumption and reality. These micro-moments are where your new identity is forged. And with time, you'll realize something profound. You are not trying to become calm. You are remembering that calm was your nature before fear tried to replace it. Anxiety is learned. Calm is reclaimed. Integration also means accepting that improvement is not linear. Some days the mind will wander. Some days emotions will feel heavier. Some days old assumptions will reappear. But the difference now is that you are no longer powerless in those moments. You no longer drown just because the water rises. You know how to breathe, how to anchor, how to slow down, how to return. The tools are no longer philosophies. They are reflexes. This is the version of you the Stoics believed in, the individual who is governed by inner wisdom rather than external chaos, someone who leads themselves through uncertainty with dignity and self-command. A person who is not fragile, but quietly formidable. And now, as this journey closes, one question remains, a question that will continue guiding your growth long after this video ends. Who do you choose to be when your mind begins to run? The person who chases every fear, or the person who stands still and watches it pass? Your answer to that question will shape your life more than any circumstance ever could. If this message resonated with you, then take a moment now to support the growth of this channel so it can reach others who need it. Like the video to help this message reach someone who is struggling to reclaim their inner peace. Subscribe to the channel for more Stoic wisdom, emotional discipline, and practical tools to calm the mind. And comment below, which anxious pattern are you ready to let go of, or which inner practice are you choosing to strengthen from today on? Your reflection may be exactly what someone else needs to begin transforming their own mind.